How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to episode 3 of the Brainstorm. I'm Sam Korus. I direct research for our autonomous technology and robotics team, joined by Nick Grous, one of the associate portfolio managers at ARK Invest. Today, we're talking Tesla AI. We're talking topical gene therapy, just a cream, no injections. And we're talking Roblox for adults. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm good. I just completed the Florida to Michigan trip. I would say 90% done by full self-driving. So that was pretty cool. It was
Nice. Are you
fun.
on the most recent update?
I am. I think 11.44, if that's the most recent. I have like the
Nice.
car is located in the garage, so it has Wi-Fi, so it gets all the updates. So I think it should be. But it was pretty smooth. Gotta hand it to him. It was pretty smooth.
Any bugs that you'd like to call out here that were nagging you along the way?
Nothing too intense. I would say it gets a little skittish around the semi trucks, but to be honest, I get skittish around semi trucks. Like I do not like driving near semi trucks, so and I sent the data to Tesla so they can see. But it definitely is a little hesitant around the larger vehicles on the road.
Nice. Packaged up by mail, sent them the data. It's all good. But
Yeah.
that actually dives right into the first topic here, right? Tesla comes out with a new Twitter handle, Tesla AI. One of the first charts they post, we'll share it here as well and talk about it. It's a classic up into the right chart. So the axes are what matter here, and they're showing compute. And so this is important because this is what we believe to be the bottleneck for Tesla going from, what helped you drive to Michigan to full self-driving and robo taxis in reality. And they're showing that by October 2024, they hope that their compute will reach 100 exaflops, which is 20 times more than the 4.5 exaflops that it disclosed during AI Day last September. And really, to put this in context here, they're comparing it to Nvidia A100 chips. So that's going from 14,000 of those A100 chips to the equivalent of 300,000 A100 chips. And then to take one more step back and contextualize that within Nvidia itself, um, Nvidia shipped an estimated 350,000 of these server GPU units in the last 12 months. So, if you're just backwards looking, the 100 exaflops from Tesla would make up roughly 30% of the revenue of Nvidia over the past 12 months. Obviously, if we go out a year, um, don't expect those ratios to hold because Nvidia is also ramping pretty quickly.
Okay, so my first question is why? Why does Tesla need so much compute capacity? I mean, you're talking about a massive amount of compute. I think this would make it one of the largest supercomputers in the world once it's fully set up. So what do they need this for? Why are they, going after this? Yeah, I would love your thoughts here.
Yeah, and this is driving their training for full self-driving and robo
Uh,
taxis.
okay.
And the reason that Tesla needs so much compute, we'll pull up actually another chart here that Daniel McGuire, one of the associates on the autonomous technology and robotics team, made, showing how much time it's taken each of these companies to reach the most recent 1 million real world miles. And so Tesla has this huge fleet of vehicles that are out on the road collecting data. And so it took just 14 hours for Tesla to collect, let's say, 1 million real world miles. Compare that to Cruise at 3 months and Waymo for 2.5 years. And so you need all of this compute to try and solve this problem at scale, not just in a geographically constrained area.
Got it. And so what happens to the compute? Where do they dedicate the compute after they solve FSD? Because I think Elon in a tweet, he mentions, this is in an effort to get full self-driving to be 10 times more performative and safe than a human driver. So once they achieve that, do they then, strive for 100 times more performance, or do they look to reallocate this compute?
Yeah, I think it's not going to be a black and white line in the sand here. And so there will be constant evolution on the performance for full self-driving. And then the other thing is, it's not just full self-driving. One of the reasons for launching, Tesla AI is that this is computer vision for how to operate in the world. So it's not just for cars on the road. It could be for Optimus or other robots moving through factories, through your home. And so I think there will be a continued drive for demand for these training computers because we're kind of just at the start here of this AI wave and finding out what's really possible.
And then maybe we just circle back to this chart and this data that we have on, total miles accumulating to each one of these companies in the respective like full self-driving solutions. How far ahead do you think Tesla is when you look at this data advantage and then also the training capacity that they're now building up? Obviously, these, two other companies, they potentially have the training capacity behind the scenes. I don't know if they do. Do they? Do you know? Like, I'm assuming like Google with, what they have, I'm sure, but maybe not.
Yeah, so I think it that you've asked a lot of good cutting questions here. So maybe we just differentiate the three here, right?
Yeah.
Because Tesla obviously is not running a robo taxi currently. Cruise and Waymo both are, right? So that's the first difference. And
Right.
I think it's an important thing to note. One, it's like people ask, when will there be autonomous cars? The answer is they're already here, right? So it's possible, they're operating, people are paying for them. The real question is, how long does it take to scale? And so that's kind of the, $1 trillion question, if you will. And so that's really why Tesla is going about it in a different way and collecting data from, people like you who've bought the vehicle and are driving it in real world conditions. And so then going back to the other question you asked is why does Tesla need this compute? What about Cruise and Waymo? So they likely do need the compute, but if you look at the amount of data, um,
It's not
maybe they're not
nearly.
right. So maybe they're not actually compute constrained. Maybe they're still data constrained. And so
Mm.
why is a million miles? It's just an easy thing to measure, but really you can think about it in terms of corner cases or accidents. And it's like how many novel things are you seeing in a million miles? Um, and every 14 hours, Tesla could be seeing 2 to 3 interesting things, whereas maybe Cruise is seeing interesting things every 3 months, and Waymo's seeing every interesting things, every 2.4 years. And again, this is real world data, and all of these companies are simulating and doing things like that. But if you could simulate all of the corner cases, then that's almost the equivalent of autonomous driving being solved, right? The fact that you don't know what they are means you can't simulate them. And that's really why this real world data is so important.
And then my last question, just to kind of really hammer this home. When we talk about the compute capacity, Tesla in the past has used and worked with Nvidia. And do you think they'll still plan to work with Nvidia and this is more supplemental compute that they're building with Dojo? Or, what are your thoughts around kind of how they'll get to that 100 exaflops? Because that's an enormous number. So yeah, curious.
Yeah, I think you hit it nail on the head there with supplemental. And I'd actually draw the comparison to batteries here. And right when Tesla came out and they said, we're going to build a battery factory, everyone's like, oh, that's bad for Panasonic. And they're like, whoa, no, 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 no. They're like, we're going so fast that we want Panasonic to build as fast as possible. And we're going to build our own because we need additional batteries, not just what Panasonic can provide. And I think the exact same thing's happening here. NVIDIA is building as quickly as they can. Prices for their hardware have increased because there's such a demand with this recent AI wave. And Tesla's sitting there saying, if this is the bottleneck, we're not going to wait and get price gouged here. We're going to, verticalize as we've done with a lot of other things and drive forward to the finish line.
Yeah, super interesting. And I think the idea that they're running a similar playbook that they have in the past in batteries, and I'm sure other areas. Um, you know, that that's pretty cool. I mean, it's, it speaks to kind of the advantages and the vertical integration and nature of Tesla as a company.
Definitely, definitely. All right, Nick, let's move on here. Topical gene therapy for dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa. I've been practicing saying that one. But what is that? That's a rare inherited disorder that causes blisters on the skin, and it's, as I said, rare. So roughly 3,000 cases in the U.S. Most people with this don't live to be 30. It's completely debilitating. Pretty brutal if you go to Google Images and search this. And currently, the best treatment is birch bark extract. So this is very revolutionary here for a couple of reasons. One, it's topical. So you just take this, you rub it on the wound directly. It's not like other gene therapies, which might require blood transfusion or injection. It's redosable, right? So this isn't curing it. You're using it and you might need to reuse it. And then the other element here, and this one's perhaps a bit more in the weeds, and Nick, I think you do a good job of explaining this one simply, but you're essentially using a gene edited herpes virus to deliver the novel treatment. But Nick, can you explain that to a
Yeah.
5-year old for me?
Yeah, well, I'll try my best. And, how much time did it take for us to understand this going back and forth with Pierce on Teams? It took quite a while. So if you're not fully understanding what we're talking about, uh, don't feel alone. It took us a while. And I think the best way that I've been able to understand it is you have an edited herpes virus. You have, an edited herpes virus packed with, and it's carrying a payload of edited genes, and these edited genes will then be expressed once the cream is rubbed on to the wound and affected area, will then change the expression of the genes in the body to prevent or suppress the disease itself. And so that's kind of, it's like multiple layers of gene editing involved in this pretty novel treatment for something that, as you mentioned, is completely debilitating and life-threatening to 3,000 people in the U.S. a year. And so that's kind of my best way of understanding it, and just how innovative it is. This is, as you mentioned, right, the only topical gene editing solution out there for any type of disease. So it's pretty interesting from that perspective. And then you kind of have these multiple layers of a gene edited herpes virus carrying a payload of gene edits uh, into the body itself.
Right. And then this was tangential but related. One of the novel findings or learnings just for us and going back and forth with Pierce is on pricing, right? So we finally get to understand what's going on here. And obviously our questions, what does it cost? And he tells us like $630,000 a year, right? And so we're like, wow, who's paying for that? And it's currently being negotiated with insurance providers for kind of what the reimbursement will be. But Pierce gave us a really good kind of back of the envelope way to think about it.
Yeah.
Is you think about the R&D cost and then the total addressable market. And so with a rare disease, 3,000 people, it's going to be expensive just because you have that low number of addressable individuals out there.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for Pierce, but I think it's like a calculus you can use for drug pricing by and large is to take the R&D spend and divide it by total addressable market to understand how pricing, um, is created. Obviously, there's probably a lot more mechanics going on, but that's like a very easy way to understand rough math of how you get to that 631,000. Because that was originally what why is this so expensive? Is there obviously there's novel innovation happening and it's new. So we thought, okay, maybe the price can come down, but it actually is, usually anchored around that R&D spend divided by total addressable market.
All right, moving on. Roblox for adults, Nick. Is this a new wave of people? Are kids just aging? Why 17 plus?
Well, kids are definitely aging. I hope. Natural evolution is happening. Um, but what we're talking about here is Roblox now segmenting out the 17 years old uh, demographic and market. They're now going to add a label for all games that developers decide should have a category ranking of 17 plus. What that essentially means is you're talking about games with more violence, you potentially realistic blood, romantic themes. You can now add depictions of alcohol, gore, gambling, but unplayable gambling, I should mention. So it's just more mature entertainment from that standpoint, something that should not be and is not suitable for children. And that's really what I think Roblox has become known for, is this platform for children. But actually, if you get into the numbers, that's not necessarily true. If you look at the last quarterly report, 55% of the total platform, which is around 600 or 66 million total daily active users, are over 13 years old. And then that has been growing. That's been growing. So that's a 2023 number, but that's been growing. And that was originally 42% back in 2020 in that first quarter. So you're seeing a nice increase, or this aging up phenomenon happening in Roblox. And then if you break it out even further, you look at the 17 to 24 demographic and category. That's the fastest growing category and user base for Roblox. And that represents 17 and older, represents 38% of daily active users as of the end of 2022. So, this idea and understanding and skepticism around the platform that is for children, not necessarily true. Sam, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you, thank you. Right, we're not spontaneously creating 17 years olds. Um, where are these eyeballs coming from? Who are they drawing attention from? Like who's the loser in this situation?
Yeah, well, I would say one, the video game sector is massive. There's 3 billion people that game regularly. So what's that, half the world population or a little under half? But then if you were to talk maybe direct competitors, I would say Fortnite as a platform is, very competitive with Roblox because they've started to integrate user generated content. So now you have creative mode within Fortnite. So that's more direct competition, but really kind of the UGC space at large. And then, if you look at the more mature gaming genres, Call of Duty, all of those, first person shooter games have enormous user bases. And that's, if you're thinking of from Roblox's perspective, that's where, maybe your users age up and out of, and they, start playing Xbox and PlayStation and the games associated with those consoles. But I think Roblox is doing a great job of being able to capture the attention as users age up, and by segmenting out and now kind of creating an incentive for developers to go after this market, you're, again, increasing the likelihood that users will stay with the platform as they age up. And again, you see that in the numbers, right? Like 42% to 55% over 3 years. That's pretty strong evidence that users are sticking with the platform.
And is this a classic? Oh, are you over 17? Check the box, and now you got little kids playing playing violent video games, watching people gamble.
It shouldn't be. I mean, they're putting in pretty rigorous restrictions, and it's centered around you. You'll have to upload a photo of your ID to be able to enter into any of these experiences. You also have developers having to talk, like if you have pre-existing um, experiences on Roblox that maybe you want to integrate something into, and that would then be defined as 17 plus, you have the ability to kind of toggle it over. Once it becomes 17 plus, this I was reading in some of the developer forums, you have no ability right now to bring it back to, so if you wanted to grab the 17 plus heading and maybe try to game the system, you have no ability to bring it back to a rating below 17 plus. Previously, like the way that Roblox had designated, it was just nine years old and then 13 years old. So those were kind of the two age cohorts that they designated, and experiences and there were different rules and regulations around what could be allowed for each of those, and now you're 17 plus, which I think again it's smart from a strategy perspective of being able to age up these users.
Nice. Anything else here that we should take away?
No, well, I think if you want to see how much development has been going on behind the scenes with Roblox. There are a ton of video clips. I think one of the best examples of, Roblox being able to cater to, first person shooter, and, some of these more 17 plus categories. There's a game called Frontlines. We'll give them, a shout out here because the fidelity, the graphics, like it looks like something that you'll see it
I'm
and
gonna look
you'll
it up.
go, yeah, you should look it up. You'll go, this is not Roblox. Like this is not what I associate the platform with. It has, great graphics. I've played it a few times. The gameplay is incredible. So it's pretty interesting to see developers now building those types of experiences. And I think the 17 plus segmentation should only speed that up.